That's the children having a birthday party. That was a way of keeping culture going, traditions going. This is preschool maths. How to play, how to stretch children, ages and stages, learning theory. This lady was so lovely. She had ever such a lot to say, but obviously couldn't write or read in any language, but she could join in. First aid at work, very popular. And feedback, usually in universities, as a supervisor, I provide feedback. If you're lucky, you get lots of feedback. But equal opportunities is really damaged because lots of us have 32 or more theses to read and grade. So it's all learning led and teaching led. And it's very transparent. If you don't hand it in on time, you don't get feedback. The student needs to know how that works to make the best of their university experiences. When we first started, the women turned up. They come early, they come late, they talked over everybody. And the challenge was to build behaviours that would get them to be less flexible in their timekeeping. I think you know what I mean. There we go. Cooking with the children. Volunteers running the creches. Children of all ages having a lovely time. English is learnt with the child alongside the concepts that the children need. English writing was encouraged, English numeracy. We did babies and play 0 to 2 as a module. We did physical play as a module. What was brilliant is the volunteers bring their own ideas to the group. They make their own games and their own songs. The stories and storytelling, this was a little snail that kept escaping, and all of the children wanted to take the snail home. The story was about mini beasts. Pretend play was explained and thought through, and what is its uses. Obviously English was taught formally as well in another room on another day. We talked a lot about how children learn. The best way to receive feedback from your supervisor, as you probably know, is to submit small amounts of work regularly. And this had the advantage of getting students to write little and often. And they did. One of the sessions was on my body, teaching children safety, look after your body. What parts are you allowed to touch? What parts would you let other children touch? This helped with the child safety in the groups and at home. The creches were run in the volunteer training sessions as well. So once the women were considering looking after children, they could take the creche whilst the rest of the refugees and asylum seekers attended other things. That's the programme for care work. All of these women passed. It was a 2-day course, lots of trying to arrange childcare and creches and food and bus fares. And then, of course, the materials to write on. Now, the research was really interesting because it was focused on their health needs and how they feel about their lives after a move to a new country. So the research gave us something more to go on. The women moved from not knowing to knowing, and obviously this theory is about liminals. What's in the middle? What actually stops you from knowing? What gets in the mix? Well, the layers of liminality that refugee women have to overcome or cope with to gain knowledge about their new situation is very, very individual for each woman, each family, each situation. But we had noted, and I know you know this, women who are withdrawn from society and experiencing negative emotions such as depression, loneliness, hopelessness, cannot do well in education. They're vulnerable to layers of being a woman, being displaced, recent experience of death and war. And the academic term for this is liminality. It's a term used to describe the psychological process of transitioning across boundaries and borders. The term limen comes from the Latin for threshold. So it's literally the threshold separating one space from another. And that's what widening participation should be doing, is making that space easier to swim across. Now, I know it's really different in everybody's country, but for this venture, a very important finding was the strength of women asylum seekers and refugees to attend and achieve the modules of education. Even though they'd separated from their homes, they were stopped from joining in mainstream adult education in the UK. The asylum seekers, as I said, can't access public funds. They've got no money, they've got no education, they've got no clothes. And their status prevented them from legal, social and economic structures. Refugees in the UK rely heavily on charities. And emotional assistance for their children is when we discussed art, helped the women to approach the anxieties and worries of their children. Children in these drawings obviously had prior knowledge of war. By talking about it, by taking it out of the box, we could actually tackle some of the residue of their last life and move on. The flip learning obviously was about creating videos, PowerPoints with the help of the women. And I've got a whole song on here of Who Took the Cookies. Let's see if it will play. Play around time. Online help is available when the women were working at home. Vina, bless her, she posted loads of links to songs on the website. She was working through a music module and she found lots in her own language and English. So other parents saw her as a leader and got her to help them complete their modules. The volunteers often taught other volunteers. Children played whilst their mums discussed difference and similarities between the countries. The women made WhatsApp groups to share learning and find useful things, like there were some free trips or you could join certain places and get some food. Inclusion for us was that the family could come. You're not stuck out of education just because you've got a child or two. Or 9. We talked about stages in drawing. We had older children in for the holidays. We talked about jobs, really good atmosphere. Friends were made by sharing your own experiences of childbirth, pregnancy. They reported cases of racism, poor service in the health systems, and they become helpful to new women coming in because they'd done the doula course, or they'd done the interpretation course. They actually could become very, very positive people for newcomers. Talked about the stages in pregnancy. And this obviously is all of the things they know. It started from where they know, because they've all given birth. We talked about handling children's behaviour. We talked about the differences. In UK we don't smack. And the actual women in the class made their notes as they wanted. Obviously we all learnt technology and digital skills and then passed them to our children. We got some homework laptops for the children with the lockdown. Transference of skills on the computer. We teach the mum and then the mum teaches the child. And mums taught each other and some great friendships were forged. We did ages and stages of play with the baby. We could use videos in English and then talk them through and put pictures up. So good teaching in terms of multi-experiences going on. Now, Coventry University, as I say, we did a research project with them and learnt lots of things ready for when we go to university, like how to choose a question to study, what methods would you do for research. And they actually carried out their own research in the refuge because all of them had been subjected to sexual violence, sexual abuse, being made into slaves, absolute slaves. As soon as they come over here, they were caught in this refuge, and they wrote it up and they published it, and it's so interesting. Obviously, every course has an award and certificate. We got the Lord Mayor in to award everybody. They all dressed up for the occasion. This was such a good thing to have happen to your STEAM, is to, you know, get there. So let's have this is a roundup of everything. I was saying there's much more than the STEM details. They actually used their time, their waiting time. They were waiting to get the right to remain here, and they did such a lot. So in conclusion, Ubuntu. I am what I am because of who we all are. Brilliant project. If ever you want to volunteer to do something like that, very good use of your own teaching time.
Move to the cookie from the cookie jar. Maya took the cookie from the cookie jar. Who, me? Yes, you, not me. Then you took the cookie from the cookie jar. Ola took the cookie from the cookie jar. Who, me? Yes, you. Then who? Maya. Who took the cookie from the cookie jar? Maya took the cookie from the cookie jar. Who, me? Yes, you. Not me. Then who? Yes, you. Who took the cookie from the cookie jar? Maya took the cookie from the cookie jar.